April 29th, 1945. American soldiers were approaching the town of Dachau in southern Germany. In a city already devastated by war, the first thing they noticed was the smell. A heavy smell, thick, impossible to ignore. Near the railroad tracks, a train sat motionless. 39 rail cars. Absolute silence. When the doors were opened, even the most experienced soldiers froze. They had never seen anything like what they saw that day. Bodies, stacked, decomposing. The entire unit went silent. In that moment, the war stopped being something fought across German battlefields. It became a war inside their own minds. But to understand what happened that day, we need to go back for a moment. By April 1945, Nazi Germany was collapsing. Allied forces were advancing from every direction. In the east, the Red Army was closing in on Berlin. In the west, American and British troops were pushing deep into German territory, often meeting little organized resistance. The Nazi regime was rapidly falling apart. Dachau sat just a few miles outside the city of Munich, and it had a long history within that system. The camp had been established in 1933, only weeks after Adolf Hitler rose to power. Originally, Dachau was built to imprison political opponents of the regime: communists, social democrats, journalists, and anyone considered an enemy of the new government. But over the years, the camp expanded, and it changed. Jews, prisoners of war, clergy members, intellectuals, and people labeled undesirable by the Nazi regime were sent there. Dachau eventually became a model for the entire concentration camp system that would spread across Nazi-occupied Europe. More than 200,000 prisoners passed through Dachau during its years of operation. Thousands died there, from starvation, from disease, from forced labor, or from execution. When American troops finally reached the camp in 1945, they found thousands of survivors, but many were barely alive. Men so thin they could barely stand. Some weighed little more than 70 pounds. Sunken eyes, skin stretched tightly over bone. Many were sick, some were dying. It was impossible to look at them without feeling shock and anger. And while the soldiers were trying to process what they were seeing, they noticed something else. SS guards were still inside the camp. Some tried to run. Others simply raised their hands and surrendered. To many American soldiers, these men were not ordinary prisoners of war. They were part of the system that had run that camp. They had overseen starvation, punishment, executions. They had kept that place running for years. In one section of the camp, an area known as the coal yard, several SS guards were gathered together and lined up against a wall. A machine gun was brought forward. And then the shooting began. Short bursts, sudden. Several American soldiers later said that in that moment, they were not thinking about military rules or international law. They were thinking about what they had just seen. The rail cars filled with bodies, the skeletal prisoners, the years of suffering that place represented. To them, it was not revenge. It was justice, immediate justice. But there was a problem. The SS guards had surrendered. They were disarmed. And under the Geneva Conventions, the international rules that define how prisoners of war must be treated, executing surrendered prisoners is forbidden. Some American officers quickly realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Reports indicate that certain officers attempted to restore order. In some cases, soldiers had to be physically restrained to stop further shooting. By the time the situation settled down, estimates suggested that somewhere between 30 and 50 SS guards may have been killed after surrendering. Was it a human reaction to unimaginable shock, or was it a clear violation of the laws of war? The question soon reached American military command. The United States Army opened an official investigation. Witness statements were collected. Reports were written. The incident was reviewed by military authorities, but no formal charges were ever filed. No court-martial took place. The report was eventually reviewed by senior officers, including General George Patton. Not long afterward, the case was quietly closed. No trials, no convictions. Only a few days later, the war in Europe would officially come to an end, and the world's attention would shift toward rebuilding a devastated continent. The men who entered Dachau that day are remembered as liberators and heroes, and without them, the camp might have continued operating. But in the minutes that followed the liberation, something changed. Military discipline broke down. The line between justice and revenge became dangerously thin. Today, when history talks about Dachau, it almost always remembers the horror of the camp, the prisoners, the victims. But far less is said about what happened in the moments after the gates were opened. And that leaves us with a difficult question. If you had walked through those gates that day, if you had smelled the air, if you had seen those rail cars filled with bodies, would you have pulled the trigger? Was it justice or revenge? And perhaps the harder question of all, should we judge those soldiers or try to understand why, in that moment, they did what they did?